But as you know, we're here tonight with Cathy and Coulter Fussell, mother and daughter quilters. Cathy Fussell has been practicing fiber arts for more than 50 years. She's been sewing and working with textiles since her early childhood in her hometown of Buena Vista, Georgia. How far away is Buena Vista from Columbus?
About 35 miles.
Okay. Today she maintains a studio in Columbus, Georgia, where she specializes in making art quilts and related works in fabric. Cathy Fussell's art is held in a number of public collections, including the Fulton County, Georgia Public Arts Collection, the Memorial Sloan Kettering Koch Collection in New York, and the Alabama Department of Archives and History in Montgomery. In 2016, Cathy was commissioned by the prestigious Congressional Club in Washington, D.C. to make a special quilt for the First Lady, Michelle Obama. The result was Apollo Splashdown Revisited, homage to Alma Woodsey Thomas. That piece will be included in the collection of the forthcoming Barack Obama Presidential Library in Chicago. Do you know when the
No.
library?
No.
Okay.
I know they're working on it. I don't know any more than that.
Yeah, I was just telling someone that today. That's really cool. Okay, and now on to Coulter. Coulter Fussell was born and raised in Columbus, Georgia, an old textile town. She is the youngest family quilter, hailing from multi-generations of seamstresses and quilters. She produces quilt works using discarded and donated textiles as her sole materials. Coulter has exhibited works across the country, including the Halsey Institute of Contemporary Art, the Mindy Solomon Gallery in Miami, and her textile works are in the permanent collections of Columbus Museum of Art and the Mississippi Museum of Art. Did I just see that a new piece was collected recently by
the Mississippi Museum of Art? Bought one of the pieces that's at the Wiregrass right now. Well, they got
was it the tackle box one?
They got the tackle box one. That was part of fulfillment of one of my fellowships I got through them. I gave them a piece basically, and I wanted to give like a big, huge piece that needed special care. And so that one was perfect for it. And one that I couldn't sell to anyone, and one that needed like a place to be. And then the one called Hot Water, they acquired that one.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I thought I had just seen something about that recently. Coulter is the 2023 Mississippi Arts Commission Individual Artist Fellowship recipient, the 2023 Mississippi Institute of Arts and Letters Visual Arts inductee, a 2021 Museum of Arts and Design Burke Prize finalist, and the 2021 Mississippi Museum of Art Biennial winner. There's a lot more that I could read from here. She was also a finalist in the 2017 South Arts Southern Prize, and you really have done a lot in the last few years. That's super impressive. I know that we're excited to have both of your works hanging in the Wiregrass Museum of Art. Cathy has a quilt, which you'll see, that is on view in the main gallery, and then Coulter has a solo exhibition in Blumberg, and both of these works will be up until June the 24th. So if you have time to swing by WMA, please come peruse the gallery. Okay, and then I'm gonna head out of here, but I will share my screen. Can you all see everything?
We can't. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't see slides. Do y'all see slides?
Mama, you might have to go to your view again.
Yeah. Okay.
See it?
No, it's just black. I don't see the slides.
Okay, let me see if I can fix something. Robin, can you see it? I see you're logged in.
I can see it as well.
You can see the slides?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mom, if you want me to tell you which one it is, I can tell you.
Oh gosh, but that'll be awkward. I can't.
It
says I'm viewing Wiregrass Museum of Art's screen.
You want to go up to where it says view, and then you go down to side-by-side speaker or side-by-side gallery, like just sort of change your view, you know?
Yeah, I've tried that.
Okay.
Let me see if I can fix it on my end, maybe. Sorry, y'all.
If it doesn't work, Mom, I can just tell you which slide it is.
I just don't understand because a while ago I saw them.
I'm going to stop sharing. Let me try to reshare. I'm going to change the setting and see if that helps. Sorry, everyone. We'll get it worked out.
Holly, let me ask you this. My share screen is lit up green. Should I not have that on? I'm afraid it'll, if I turn it off, it'll block you.
No, that's not, you mean on the bottom, Mama?
Yeah. Is yours green? Okay.
All right, I'm going to try one more time.
Yeah, I can see it. It's the Alabama River at G's Bend quilt.
No, I don't see that.
Okay, I'm going to
Yeah, and then
pull it
there's
up to
of the three girls. Mama, is there another way that you can look at the slides somewhere else? You have them on your phone?
I don't know. I have no idea.
You know what?
If you go to the email I sent, I shared the file with you, so you could open it up from your phone if you wanted to look that way.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Man,
I can reshare it too.
it's okay, Mama, and I can go first if y'all want to do that, or it doesn't matter to me.
Do you want to go first?
Well, no, because, well, God, I'm frustrated. Coulter, just tell me what's there and we'll talk.
So the first is Alabama River at G's Bend.
Okay. So it's just time to talk, okay? All right. First of all, I'm real sorry I'm not seeing the slides. We saw them in practice, but thank you, Holly, for including us in these two exhibits. It's been a pleasure to work with you and to work. Always, it's a pleasure to go to the Wiregrass Museum. My husband and I have been following activities at the Wiregrass for a long time, and so it's really an honor to have my work there. And of course, it's a pleasure to work with Coulter. People are always asking me, aren't you honored that your daughter, aren't you proud of your daughter for being a quilter? And I say, yeah, I'd love her even if she were not, but yeah, it's extra special good that she's a quilter. And thank you, all of you who are tuned in here. Thank you very much for tuning in today and listening to us and come up with some good questions. We like questions. I think the slide you're looking at is my Alabama River at G's Bend quilt, which is a large quilt. It's about 4.5 feet high by 6 feet wide. And it's the first river quilt I made. As Holly explained in the introduction, I've been quilting for a long time. I've been sewing since I was about 4 years old and quilting since I was 19. And for most of those years, I made traditional quilts and was happy for a long time making traditional quilts. But at a certain point in time, I started to get a little antsy or something. I wanted to move. I wanted to do something else besides traditional quilts. I realized that there was a bigger world of quilting than traditional quilts. Not to criticize traditional quilts. I love them. I have all the respect in the world. I still bounce back and make one every now and then. But I wanted to make things that were a little more free form than traditional quilts. But it took some help from Coulter to do that. And we'll talk more about that in a minute when we get to our 3 collaborative quilts. But this is the Alabama River at G's Bend. It's the first river quilt I made. It's the first time I worked in canvas. And it's one of the very first times that I did machine quilting. I had been a hand quilter up until this. So this quilt is a little bit of a mess in terms of precision and all that stuff. But it turned out successful, I think, in terms of composition, and it hangs in our living room, and I love the quilt. It's made from canvas and denim, the River's blue denim. it came about because I was looking, and when I decided I wanted to try to go over to Gee's Bend, which is not very, very far from us, and I'm sure everybody who's listening knows the significance of Gee's Bend quilts. And I thought, well, you know, it's not that far. I'll see what the route is like to get to Gee's Bend. So I went to my computer and pulled up a map, and I saw that beautiful bend in the river. And I knew right then that I had to make it into a quilt. So my husband, Fred, is a painter. He had just thrown me a piece of canvas and said, if you can ever use this, use it. So I sat down and drafted this. I didn't have a projector. I didn't have a light board. I just, you know, I drew the river by, I don't know what you call this method, when you you draw little squares and over your whole field, and then you put the different little parts of the drawing into each square. That probably has a name, doesn't it, Coulter? I don't know what you call that. But anyway, that's how I transferred the image to my canvas. And this got me started. I still haven't been to Gee's Bend, but it got me started making river quilts, and I haven't stopped. And that was about 12 years ago. I would like to say that I'm drawn to rivers because of their importance in literature and music and religion. You know, I taught literature for 28 years. And so I would like to say that my attraction to rivers is intellectual, but it's really not. It's visual. I love the curves of rivers. Sometimes I sit down to my computer and just scan maps looking for nice curves in rivers or nice topographical contour lines. So that's my first river quilt, my first machine quilting, my first work in canvas. So what's the next slide, Coulter?
Let's see. It's Genocide at Horseshoe Bend.
Okay, this is a more recent quilt, a much more recent quilt. I made it about 2 years ago. It's 40-something inches by 40-something inches, I think 43 by 43. It's my first, and so far really the only overtly political quilt that I've made. I know a lot of art quilters out there make highly overtly political quilts, and I usually don't. I admire those people who do. My quilts are usually more celebrations of the landscape, but my husband and I made a trip, my first trip, over to the Horseshoe Bend battle site, where, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Creek Indians were slaughtered by Andrew Jackson's troops in the 1800s. And it's such a historically significant place, and so moving a place to go and be there, where all those really innocent people died. So I came home and had to make this quilt. And if you look closely, that's the Tallapoosa River. And I made the river in red because the story was that after all the people were slaughtered, the river ran red with blood for days. If you look closely inside the big bend, you will see a bunch of little tiny seed stitches. There are 1,200 seed stitches. Each one represents the body of a slain Creek Indian. So that's Genocide at Horseshoe Bend. It's owned by the Alabama Department of History and Archives, and it's hanging right now. I just heard through a couple of grapevines a few days ago that it and another version of the Alabama River at Gee's Bend are both hanging in one of the auditoriums. I don't know the name of the auditorium there in the archive building in Montgomery. So if you want to see it, the Alabama Archives is just it's just a tremendous institution. It's great. There are all these history exhibits, and I'm just extremely honored to have my work there. So that's Genocide at Horseshoe Bend. What's next, Coulter?
Snake Shoals on the Chattahoochee.
Oh yeah, Snake Shoals on the Chattahoochee is about 60-something by 60-something. It's a spot on the Chattahoochee River about 25 miles south of Columbus that I was attracted to, again, the curve in the river. And when I started looking closer, a lot of history has happened in that 3 mile, it's 2.9 miles by 3.1 mile. So a lot of history has happened in that one 9 square mile plot of land. The Spanish, this was the northernmost border of Spanish Florida back in the 1600s, and the Spanish built a fort there on the river in that bend. It only lasted about a year, but they had a fort there for a year that's been thoroughly studied by archaeologists. And then in the 1800s, a man by the name of Mr. Boykin, an early settler here, had a big house in Columbus and had a plantation there, and grew cotton and other crops there on the river. And then in the 1930s, Irish Catholic priest came in and established a Catholic mission up in the upper left-hand side, and that mission is still there today. It is called Holy Trinity. And so a lot of history has occurred. Fort Benning in the 1940s moved very close to this, but it's not, Fort Benning is not quite on this 9 square mile plot. But again, this work is on canvas, and the quilted lines on there, the ones that are in the darker color, are the true topographical contour lines. Sometimes I put if the scale is right, I put the true topographical contour lines on the quilt. And the scale's not always right for that, but in this case it was. Across the middle of the quilt, where you see more open space and some straight line quilting, those are my hand quilted lines to represent the cotton rows that Mr. Boykin must have had planted. So that's Snake Shoals on the Chattahoochee. It's hanging right now. I have a big exhibit of 16 of my map quilts up at the Southeastern Quilt and Textile Museum in Carrollton, Georgia. They will be there until June 24th, the same day that they come down, the quilt in Dothan comes down. So if you get a chance to go to Carrollton, my work is there. And then one of my good quilting friends, Marion Zielinski, has a quilt exhibit there in the same museum. So I invite you to go see those 2 shows. What's next, Coulter?
Okay, it's the Fisk maps.
Oh yeah, okay. Several years ago, I started seeing online these Fisk maps of the Mississippi, and some of you might have seen them too. They circulate online a lot. In the 1940s, a cartographer by the name of Harold Fisk was commissioned by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to draw a series of maps representing the historical meanderings of the Mississippi since the beginning of time until the 1940s when he was making the maps. So he set about doing it, and he drew these 15 maps that illustrate the historical meanderings of the Mississippi from St. Genevieve, Cape Girardeau, Missouri, down to the Atlantic Ocean in South Louisiana. And they're beautiful, beautiful maps. You can find them online. Just Google Fisk maps. And they're very involved. Each different color represents a different course of the river over time. And I had great fun figuring out how to do this. That map is, are you looking at the map of my quilt or the map?
Maps on the left and your quilt's on the right. Or side by
side. Good. The quilt is about 6 feet tall, and I drew the colors with Inktense pencils. They're an ink dye, and then I did dense quilting in various colors to magnify the individual colors, and all of that is machine quilted. Anyway, I had fun. I've done 3 of the Fisk maps, and I thought about entertaining the notion of doing all 15, but that would keep me from doing anything else for the rest of my life, so I don't think I will. And what's next?
The one we did with the 3 little girls.
Okay, this is what I wanted to get to. So maybe you should talk about how, okay, I'll tell this. Coulter had never paid much attention to my sewing. I think the boys, her brothers, had paid more attention to my sewing than she had. She was always drawing and painting and cutting out things out of paper, but she had not really ever wanted to sew. She made clothes for her dog one time, but that was about it. But she was off at college and came home one time and said, Mama, if I pull some pieces out of your stash, some pieces of fabric out of your stash and cut them out and throw them down, will you sew them? Will you quilt them? And I said, oh yeah. So she started pulling pieces out of my stash and throwing them, cutting out figures and throwing them down. And I started quilting. And it was really a life-changing moment for me in my quilt life, because I began to see, because of Coulter and these, we made 3 collaborative quilts. This is the first one. And I began to see that I don't have to stick to any traditional pattern. I can do anything I want to do in quilting. So this is the first quilting that Coulter did. And she didn't actually quilt. She cut the pieces. She didn't do the sewing. And it's the first time I was able to begin to break free from traditional quilting. So they're very important quilts to our quilting lives. And one thing I want you to notice is that on this one, Coulter chose fabrics that are pretty much traditional quilt fabrics, cotton prints. Now you'll see as you look at some others that she's beginning to move away from using traditional cotton print, quilt prints. But on this one, she pretty much stuck with that. But this is a nice quilt, and it's owned by one of my sisters. Well, actually, one of my nieces, I think, technically. And it hangs in North Atlanta in Roswell. But it's the first of 3 that Coulter and I collaborated on.
All right, so this one is the pink and white one with all that gold on the left, and then the possum of symmetry on the right.
Okay, the pink, let's look at the pink one first, because that's the second one we made. It's called 3 Girls, and what I hope you can see in the slide, I know these photographs of these 3 are not great, but what I hope you can see on the slide is that Coulter is here beginning to move away from traditional cotton print fabrics. She's got some netting on there, some gauzy stuff. She's got some obviously historic fabric that's a little stained in the background. She's got ribbon around the outside. She's got the beginnings. She's really starting to move toward non-traditional fabric choices. And again, she cut out all the pieces and designed the composition, and all I did was sew. But this is hand quilted. There's some really dense hand quilting and gold thread on there that looks pretty good when you get up close to it, I think. And the one on the right, the other one is Possum Up a Symmetry, which is based on a song in our family. And should I sing the song, Coulter? Okay, I'll sing the song. All right. Possum up a symmetry, fox down on the ground. Foxy say to the possum, possum shake me some Simmons down. So our mother and grandmother, my grandmother and mother used to sing that song to us, and I used to sing it to Coulter. So Coulter went into my stash and pulled out corduroy and burlap and this awful looking upholstery fabric, really rough upholstery stuff to make the possum. And she pulled out some curtains from the attic and all kinds, some striped canvas and all kinds of different fabrics to make this quilt, which is really a tall quilt. It's about 8 or 9 feet tall. It hangs here in our house. And the words to the song are hand quilted by me around the outer edges, and across the quilt are hand quilted some lines that look almost like a musical staff. I love my husband, Coulter's dad, drew those. They're derived from Southeastern Indian pottery, and I thought they worked really well on this quilt because they do suggest to me the musical staff, and I had fun quilting them. So I thought that part of it really worked on this quilt. But these are the 3 quilts that got me started with art quilting, which I'm just thoroughly into. So is there another one of mine? Oh, I guess tie snake is there, huh?
Yeah, but now it's the tie snake quilt.
Okay, the tie snake quilt is hanging in Dothan. I made it recently, and it came about, I don't know if you saw the interview that the Wiregrass did with me about this quilt, but it came about because one of my neighbors, a friend here in Columbus, called me up and said he wanted to give me all his neckties. And I really didn't want them. I put him off 2 or 3 times. I've had people offer me their neckties several times. And I couldn't, I've seen quilts made out of neckties, and I've seen some beautiful ones, but I didn't particularly want to make one. I didn't want to make one of the usual ones. So I said no for a long time, but finally I took pity sakes on my poor friend, and I took his neckties, and all of a sudden the idea of the pun, tie snake. I walk on the Chattahoochee River all the time, and I walk right by this historic marker that explains the myth of the tie snake, which is a Native American and Muskogee Creek myth to explain the deceptive nature of the Chattahoochee River. It can look very calm and serene on top, but once you get in that river, there are whirlpools and eddy waters that will real quickly pull you under. And the Muskogee Creeks explain that with the myth of these tie snakes that would wrap their serpentine bodies around humans and pull them underneath the water. So I walk by the historic marker almost every day that explains that myth. So when my friend was giving me the neckties and I was walking by that marker and thinking of tie snakes out there in the river ready to grab me if I fell in, the idea of the pun came to me, and I made the snake. And thanks to Coulter for sending me the blue taffeta, I looked and looked for the background fabric and couldn't find it. And she had in her stash this acres of blue taffeta. So, but each of those snakes, each snake is a different necktie, men's necktie. And that was great fun to make. That's my hand in the middle. I almost drowned in the blue taffeta making that quilt. Is that it for me, I think? What's next in the slides?
It's me now. Okay, hey, I'm Coulter. Thank y'all for joining. I appreciate y'all zooming in, and thank you to the Wiregrass for letting me have the show. I made a bunch of new pieces specifically for this show. And back to those 3 quilts that me and Mama worked on together. I guess I was 19 or something, maybe 20. And I think we did those in a real short amount of time. I was like home for a few weeks or something. And then I didn't sew for 11 years. So it wasn't really a situation where I like started quilting that day. I started quilting that day, and then I stopped quilting for a really, really long time and then didn't make it quilt again until I was pregnant with my first son when I was in my late 20s. So, and I made him a quilt. And so that was the 4th quilt I made. I made those 3 with Mama, and then a 4th quilt for my kid, a decade later.
Hey, I got to interrupt and say that first quilt that Coulter made by herself was just a killer good quilt. It's the quilt that I had always wanted to make. It's a small quilt, a crib quilt. It is absolutely a great quilt. I was so jealous.
Wow. So anyway, I was, waiting tables, drawing and painting, having shows at restaurants that whole time in my 20s when I wasn't sewing. My favorite artists were artists like Benny Andrews, like a lot of like collage artists who incorporated fabrics. And I was painting figures. And after a while, I realized that I was just painting these figures so that I could paint the clothes that they were wearing. When I started working in textiles, I had all these old clothes to choose from because I had never thrown any clothes away. I had T-shirts from elementary school, and it all sort of became clear to me that I had, sort of subconsciously been saving all this stuff up all over the years so that I could one day, find my medium, which was textiles. The work that I had that I made for the Wiregrass the show is called Waterground, and it's a continuation of this series that I've been doing for a couple of years now. I make these like river raft quilts. They're these sort of like real imaginary conceptual vessels that I outfit for a journey that one might take downriver, some sort of either escape journey or some sort of process somewhere. You know, it's a metaphor, as rivers can be often in art, music, and literature, and beyond. And so these river rafts, sort of, the first one started with a fitted sheet. I had made this like sort of weird quilt, and then I had a fitted sheet and I wrapped it around a canvas and stuffed the fitted sheet so it looked like it was like a flotation device. I was like, man, that looks like a raft. And so that sort of like started my whole entire river raft series that has now like merged into like maps of rivers. Like if you're on the river raft going down this, having this journey going down river toward the ocean, you need a map to guide you. And so some of these are like maps. And now some are starting to be like landscapes. What do you see pass by you on the riverbank as you're going, you know, on this journey down to the Gulf of Mexico with children and, you know, on this sort of river raft. And all of these things are starting to sort of mesh into like, you know, the map quilts and the landscape quilts and the river quilts are all coming together into just sort of one big rolled up thing. This one's called Coverage Area, and this is about 8 or 9 feet tall. This is sort of a map quilt, like where we're from, Columbus, Georgia, Phoenix City, Alabama. The Chattahoochee River runs right between those two towns. There's mills on one side and the people who used to work at the mills on the other side. And so in this river raft quilt, which is sort of a map landscape, I used the grid of this old quilt to sort of make it look like city blocks and bridges over the river that runs through the middle. And you can see there's sort of like a watery fabric that comes down. That's supposed to be the old dam that used to run the turbines at the river that would power the mills. And you have a person up there that's entirely covered in a blanket, which sort of speaks to the people who were working in these mills and stuff. A friend of mine named Andres Gonzalez took that photo. It's he took it in Mongolia. So I've started to incorporate a lot of photography in my work. I don't take these pictures. I use other people's photographs, and I use photographs that are just laying around my studio. And so, you know, if you give me art, it'll probably wind up in one of my pieces. I never ask, I just do it and hope they like it. Okay, we can go to the next one. Okay, this one is Zero Bubble. This is a submarine river raft quilt. This is my first freestanding sculpture. It's made with an old ironing board. And I took this old quilt and sort of put it at an angle to sort of make it look like it was diving down or, you know, coming up, I don't know. And a lot of my river raft quilts have escape tunnels in them, so that if you're on your river raft on your journey and like something happens, you can go down these escape tunnels and escape. And to the bottom of the river. The escape is you can go to the bottom of the river. And that sort of stems from this urban legend in Columbus, Georgia, and Phoenix City. Phoenix City was this notorious gambling town. Some of you from Alabama will know about that. And so, you know, there was everybody from Columbus and Phoenix City always was told that if the cops came to raid all the gambling joints and whorehouses or whatever in Phoenix City, that there were these levers that they would pull, the people that ran the gambling joints, and the floor would open on the bottom of the gambling joints, and all the slot machines would slide out through tunnels under the joints and go to the bottom of the river. And so people would, you know, whenever the dam was shut and the river got low, people would get out there with like metal detectors trying to find, you know, old money from these slot machines. Probably wasn't ever true at all. But so the idea of escaping through a tunnel to the bottom of the river in like emergency is something that recurs over and over again in these pieces. Every time you see something circular, some sort of tunnel, that is an escape tunnel. This submarine, Zero Bubble is the level of the submarine. You're trying to get, you know, level. But this submarine also has a lens in it that I built in it where you can look through the lens and it flips the image of the escape tunnel upside down. The escape tunnel in front of it with a heart. So it's got a little a built-in periscope. Keep it, you know, like a real submarine. All right, next, please. This is hot water. This one's about 9.5 feet tall. This was just acquired by the Mississippi Museum of Art, and it was at Dothan as well. This is yet another river raft quilt. On the right side of this quilt, everything's stuffed to be inflated in rows like a, you know, like a float, like a pool float. And on the bottom left is another escape tunnel. That's a dress I knitted for a kid and never finished it for this girl I knew. And on the top right is this crocheted square thing that came into my studio, and I put it on the piece as like a design element because I thought it just looked good. And then later I was like, that could be like some sort of target or some sort of landing pad. So I decided it was a helicopter landing pad in case of emergency. And this happens often in my work. I do have a narrative going on in my head, but some really a lot of these ideas are just often inspired by the fabric. I'll see something and then relate that shape to the story. You know, I don't think beforehand I'm going to make a quilt with the helicopter landing pad. You know, it's the other way around. I see something that sort of looks like it would work for the quilt in terms of like, what's this wild story what's this adventure this person could go on this quilt. Okay, next, please. Okay, this is Tackle Box. This is a really, really big one. This is one of my most recent works. I think I finished it like right before I hung it in Dothan. And this is, you know, my work starting to get more and more sculptural. This work is about, you know, a tackle box, like what you would take to the river. I love to fish, and like a lot of fishing people on the river growing up. And it also sort of addresses like compartmentalization, where you place things. And it's got like lures and trinkets, and I don't have a good photograph up close, but it also has the placemats. I use the placemats a lot on these works to sort of act as rudders. This has also some mink on it. I get a lot of furs and like, you know, animal hides and stuff into the studio. So a lot of that comes into play. I get lots of shoe boxes with patterns in them. And so I use the shoe boxes with patterns in them exactly as they come into the studio. I don't change them. I just set it up there. Now they're heavy, so I have to like figure out this weird system inside the shoebox with I have to make a shelf and put it inside the shoebox and then nail that to the wall. But these shoe boxes that if you see my work again or follow my work, you'll see shoe boxes like this, and that's just how they drop them off to me. And so often my work is really inspired by the stuff that people bring me sort of as is. The photograph there of the planter made out of a car tire turned inside out is one of my dad's photographs. And I'm doing a whole series with my dad where I'm using photographs, Kodachrome slide photographs he took in the 1970s and 80s of like native flora from our region. And that's my next series of work that I'm going to be working on. All right, I think I have two more slides real quick. Okay, so this is the Florida Room series. This is the last two slides. We grew up going to North Florida, Redneck Riviera every year. Growing up with my family, everybody from where we're from went there, and everybody from Dothan probably went there too. And so it was a big deal to go, you know, to the Gulf of Mexico, the North Florida, and it's very culturally specific there, and it's absolutely beautiful. And it's this sort of mix between, you know, sort of the most southern of southerners and this like just beautiful flora and fauna and like this paradise, and then it's real poor. It's great. Anyway, not that I want anybody to be poor, but there's a lot of character in North Florida. And there's also this phenomenon. When I was in junior high, everybody in the suburbs started making Florida rooms. They would add these Florida rooms to the back of their houses, you know, and I thought it was so funny because they didn't look anything like Florida. you know? And so I decided to make a series of pieces about the Panhandle, which is where the Chattahoochee, Apalachicola, Flint rivers all dump out into the Gulf of Mexico, and where it would be the end of your river raft journey. The goal is that you go through this journey with your children, you end up in the ocean, which is freedom or whatever. So I named them by the time of day. There's only 4. And on the left is dawn at the beach, which is usually when I'm up. I go fishing at dawn, usually with my dad. We catch sand fleas, and it's a beautiful time in North Florida. And then the right side is day, which, you know, that's when everybody comes out with their beach umbrellas, and there's an Air Force base there, and the planes start flying over. And we can go to the next slide, please. And then we have sunset, pretty clear there. I got some airbrush in that one. All these are based off beach towels. And then night on the right. And that's, you know, you've got the shark there. You've got the cars going up and down the strip, you know, between like Mexico Beach, Panama City, you know. And then you've got this glowing phosphorescent from the seaweed in that piece as well. And all 4 of those pieces are at Southside Gallery right now in Oxford, Mississippi. So, and I think that's it for my slides. So if anybody has questions.
Okay, I'm popping back in.
Okay.
I'm gonna stop sharing the screen. Well, if I can figure that out. Okay, so everyone, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box, or there's also a Q&A box, so I'll be looking at both of those.
I have something to say. Okay. Listeners might want to know that Coulter and I never did set out to deliberately make river quilts. I mean, I don't think she was thinking about my river quilts when she started her river quilts, and they independently arose.
No, it never occurred to me. You know, when we had that show at the Linden House in Athens, they were like, well, y'all can both talk about the fact that you make river quilts. And I was like, oh yeah.
I know.
And it's interesting because your use of the river is so different, you know, like you're looking at the actual physical nature of the river itself, where you're, you know, embodying how to move through that space. I think it's cool.
I think it's because I was like, why didn't it ever occur to me that we're both doing this? But I think it's because the river is so omnipresent.
Yeah.
It's so big and such a big part of our lives, where I grew up, where Mama still lives. And even in Mississippi, I mean, we're what are we famous for? Our river. And so like, it's such a big omnipresent thing that it's almost like you don't see it, or that it's assumed. Well, like, of course, you know, we're both super into rivers because we're from the Chattahoochee Valley, you know. And so yeah, I thought that was so funny. I thought about that as well when they asked us to do that talk the other time about our river quilts. So I was like, yeah, we both do that. That's awesome.
It looks like there is a question for you, Coulter. This is from Lane. He says, so inspiring. Coulter, do you sew your pieces together? How do you attach the different fabrics? Are they stretched over canvas / wood frames?
Okay, so make all sorts of types of quilts. All the quilts at Southside Gallery right now are 3-layered quilts with regular muslin back and batting in the middle, and they're sewn all the way through with quilted stitches. A lot of the works at the Wiregrass right now are, well, one's a full quilt, like a real quilt, but oftentimes I'll take a panel and stretch with batting over the panel, like a wood panel, stretch it with batting, staple the batting on the back, and then build the work on top of the batting and sew through the first 2 layers, so that I get that sort of textural softness of a quilt, but I have the stability of some sort of sculptural wall piece, so that I can put wooden elements on there, so I can nail things in there. So I've, you know, probably, God, I mean, this is with any quilt, but like, I spend 90% of my studio time figuring that out, like how to structure my work. And the 10% left over is what you see, you know, like the tip of the iceberg is what actually is viewed. And so I'm really sort of spending days and days. I mean, there was one structure I worked on for like 5 months trying to figure out how to make this thing happen. And I just figured it out by looking at another artist who did something similar. It was this door. I needed this door shaped like a horse to swing open, and I couldn't figure out how to do it. And I was at the Mississippi Museum of Art, and they had a Sam Gilliam piece, and he had swinging doors on one of his pieces, and he just used one of those long piano hinges. And I was like, well, that's going to do it. You know, put it at this particular place on the horse's butt. But it was, anyway, and so yeah, I spent a lot of time figuring out structure, and it's ever evolving and ever changing. So that's a great question, because that's primarily what I do all day, is figure that out.
Is that piece in Tuscaloosa right now?
I just took
it.
So it's up at the studio, yeah.
I will add that Coulter sews almost exclusively by hand. I sew mainly now by machine, but Coulter sews almost exclusively by hand. She does have a machine and occasionally puts in a machine seam or two, but most of her work is completely by hand.
It's easy for me because my machine will inevitably mess up. So
sorry to interrupt. There's another question. Do y'all have many quilts you've made that you would never ever let go of?
Well, you know, that first quilt I made for my son, I sold that.
Oh my gosh.
You sold that quilt.
You know, that was back before I was a quilter. I didn't know, but I wouldn't sell any of Mama's works. Like the quilts I have of hers, or the quilts, you know, that obviously I wouldn't sell Mama's works. I have cut one up before though and put it in my own.
Oh yeah, I saw that. She got my permission.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sell the 2 collaborative quilts that Coulter and I worked on together. Now, one of my sisters owns one of them. That was a gift to her. But the other 2 that we made, I'm not getting rid of those. Somebody really wanted one of them, and no, I'm not going to sell that. I don't think I'll sell the Alabama River at Gee's Bend either. I think I'll keep that one just because I like looking at it. It's my first map quilt. But most of the rest of them, yeah. I mean, I do sell a lot. I sell quilts, and I make quilts on commission. So I make map quilts and river quilts of other people's places, you know.
I'll sell anything.
I'll sell most everything.
Well, we'll give a few more minutes for more questions if anyone wants to even make a comment. It doesn't have to be a question. But I'll say it sounds like you both have really informed each other's practices, even if it was subconsciously, you know, or just, you know, like a natural absorption of each other. But if you could specifically name what do you think is the most important thing that you've learned from each other in terms of your practice?
Well, I've literally learned how to sew. Like, I mean, I learned how to do this by saying, so Mama, what is basting? What should I use for basting? How do I bind this? Like, what I learned was very basic, and I learned it over asking. It was never a sit down lesson or anything. I learned texting, calling, you know, going home to visit, and then she'd show me. So, I mean, what I learned was like how to do it, you know. So.
Well, what I learned from Coulter was how to break free of bonds and how to just use on that possum up a symmetry quilt. There's this one spot that I point to. I was already, there was a raw edge, a real rough raw edge on this piece, and as I was finishing the quilt, Coulter was standing there watching, and I began to turn it under and do my real neat little meticulous needle turn and applique to get the rough edge all hidden away. And Coulter said, "No, Mama, leave it rough, leave it rough." And I said, "Leave it rough? I can't leave it rough." And she said, "Yeah, leave it rough. It'll be more interesting that way." And you know what? It was. That was my epiphany. I realized everything didn't have to be precise and turned under. I could have threads hanging off and they would be interesting. I don't always do that.
But everything has to work. Because when I first made those quilts with Mama, I would pick them up, everything would fall off, you know, like things weren't sewn on right, things weren't pieced in the right way or whatever. So there's an order of operations that you really have to
Yeah.
follow.
Order of operations is extremely important, even in the simplest of quilts. And I struggle with order of operations because I use a lot of, in doing applique the rivers, and I use a lot of fusible. And so you have to work upside down, and then you think you're going to turn it over. So it has to be mirror image. You know, order of operations is extremely important in quilting. But I think it's interesting that over the course of time, Coulter has become, she started off not worried at all about precision. That drove me crazy. And she's become much more precise. And I started off being precise and have become much more imprecise. And I think we're starting to meet somewhere in the middle. But certainly precision is much less important to me. I'm now more interested in composition than I am, even though I'll still get hung up on precision, and I'm still proud of the fact that I can precise right in there. But
you how to do it. You know, you got practice makes perfect. You have years of skill building.
Yeah, I'm proud of my skills, but you know, I'm also proud of the fact that I know when to turn them loose.
Yeah,
and you're the reason I know that.
Yeah, you know, also over the course of years, in terms of like precision, I've learned more about traditional quilting. I mean, I learned a lot from Mama. We grew up surrounded by those quilts made by all sorts of people, not just hers. And you know, as you just get older and more into your work, you read more about it. So, you know, the more precision elements come into my work because I have a greater knowledge and appreciation for it. So I use it. Before I just didn't know enough to use it, and now I know enough to use it more, you know.
So basically, your mom taught you the fundamentals, and your daughter taught you how to kind of break free from some of those constraints.
Right.
Yeah, like, you know, I didn't know that you had to follow any constraints.
Like, what is that?
It's like, why not? Like, am I going to get on restriction? Like,
yeah, the quilt police are going to come lock you up in jail.
So,
well, I don't see any more questions popped up, but thank you so much for taking your time this evening to be with us. And to the viewers, thank you so much for you know, logging in. And this video will be uploaded to YouTube at some point in the next couple days, and we'll share the video with everyone else. So have a wonderful rest of your evening.
yeah, thank you.
Oh wait, okay, no wait, they said thank you. Judy said thank you. So that was another question.
Thank you, Holly.
You're welcome. Bye. Have a great night.
Yeah.